Hi everybody, it's Leah and welcome back to the Tell Your Story podcast. Today I have a mayoral candidate for Sacramento, Flo Cofer, and she's going to tell you guys a little bit about her story. We're going to talk through some things with the upcoming election and just give you guys a little bit of insight. So the first time I met Flo was at my school. She came to Grant, or actually that's not even the first time. The first time was when I spoke at the Urban League. Yeah. So I had an episode about this earlier, but some of you guys might know there was an incident at my school a few months back. I don't remember the exact month, but with the shooting on campus, and I was asked to come speak on the behalf of the student body to the mayoral candidates, and I feel like that's when we really connected because Flo gave up some of her speaking time so that I could just address the situation, which I'm very thankful for. So that was our first time meeting, and she's been super involved in Del Paso Heights, and she's made that like kind of a point in your campaign, right? Mm-hmm. So why has that been like so important to you to just like connect with like that community specifically?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me on. This is exciting, and yeah, that's when I met you, and I think the shooting had happened earlier that day, and I just felt weird about coming into the community and not acknowledging what had happened quite literally next door, right? And so for me, Del Paso Heights has always had this special place in my life, in part because that was one of the first neighborhoods I really got to know when I moved here. So I moved here almost 20 years ago. And when I came, I didn't really know anybody in Sacramento. I was here to do a fellowship at the California Department of Public Health. And I moved from Michigan. I drove out here with a friend of mine who lives in LA. We stopped there, dropped off stuff, and then I drove up to Sacramento. And so it was sight unseen, and I'm trying to get to know people, and someone suggested that I join the Urban League Young Professionals. So the first neighborhood I really got to know was Del Paso because it was a place that we convened and hung out. The first school I got to know in Sacramento was Grant. The first community I got to know was this community. And so as I'm learning about the history of the community, I'm realizing how much it's like the neighborhood I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is the Hill District. And it's the neighborhood that August Wilson wrote his Century series about. That includes Fences and Two Trains Running and Jitney and all of these other plays. And I grew up going to see those plays when they were debuted at our public theater, and they were written about my neighborhood. And my neighborhood is a historically Black neighborhood that had a really strong economic core, right? A place where you could shop, kind of like what Del Paso Boulevard used to be, but it's not like that right now. Right. And so that's kind of what appealed to me, is like, here is this historically important space that in Sacramento that used to have this thriving, business district and all these things, but it's not like that anymore. And so here's where we find ourselves. And that's the neighborhood I was born into. So for me, there was a real connection automatically to this first neighborhood I was introduced to just because it was the first. Mm-hmm. And that has continued to be a focus of the work that we've done. While I was part of the Urban League, we did a program with Grant. So I've come in multiple times with Rolanda Wilkins to be able to talk to some of the young women at Grant. We worked with Fairbanks Elementary School and did our Reading Day program, which was all about celebrating and getting kids excited about reading from first through third grade. So we adopted a first grade class, and we came in every Friday during first, second, and third grade and brought books that were culturally relevant and read to them and got them excited about reading. And so this has just been a community that I have been deeply embedded in. We have, done work with the Roberts Development Center and just all of these things that are happening in the neighborhood. And so that's my connection to Del Paso. It's always going to have a very special place in my heart, because I believe that we should be investing in the corridors that have historic importance. And I think that every neighborhood in Sacramento should be able to feel proud of what it has to offer, should be a destination point for people who don't live there to be able to come and experience art and music and recreation and just enjoy themselves. And so that's my vision for Sacramento, and I know that every neighborhood wants that, and every neighborhood wants it to look different in their neighborhood based on their local culture.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I can relate to a lot of what you're saying in that, and that I didn't grow up in Del Paso Heights, but I ended up there for school. I played basketball. I became a part of student body. And I think that really for almost every neighborhood in Sacramento, just like it is in Del Paso, the people that you grew up around become your family. Yeah. So I definitely feel like I really like was embedded in that community as well. And you talked about like moving into that community, and I feel like it's really just one that opens people with welcomes people with open arms. Absolutely. And is definitely something really good to be a part of. I know you kind of like touched a little bit on like your childhood and growing up, and I want to give people an opportunity to just learn about that too, really learn about like where are your roots, what brought you to Sacramento, and what are your roots that have like formulated your viewpoints on things.
Yeah. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm the daughter of two public school teachers. My mom taught 8th grade English and my dad taught 8th grade math. And so I always tell people like I grew up in this space where I learned early on that community means we take care of each other. And those words were never spoken to me by anybody in my community. It was just the way we lived our lives. And so I always tell this story with the caveat that I do not support, racial segregation. But Pittsburgh is very racially segregated in a way that Sacramento right now is not. Sacramento is much more socioeconomically segregated. So people tend to live around people who have similar incomes and wealth than them, but not necessarily people of the same racial or ethnic background. Whereas in Pittsburgh, it's the exact opposite. You live around people of the same race as you, predominantly, especially when I was growing up, even if they weren't of the same, economic, status as you, and they did have different incomes. And so my neighborhood, the Hill District, had people who were sort of solidly middle class or middle upper class, and then it also had housing projects and Section 8 and everything in between. And so what that meant was that there were a lot of diversity of experience and input, but all living in the same space, attending the same churches, attending the same schools, right? Going to the same grocery stores, like doing things together, but we're not all having the same economic experience. And so what that meant was that when there were these points where we were coming together as a community, there was also a sharing. So if you lived in my neighborhood, for example, and you said, hey, I want to go to college, somebody would whisper to you to come to our house, because my parents would sit you down at our dining room table. Ours wasn't round like this one. It was long and rectangular, but they would sit you at the end and you would be encouraged to write your college essays and work on your applications. And you would probably come back a few times for revisions and things like that. And on the way out the door, my dad would be saying, hey, have your parents call us so we can make sure that we work on the FAFSA applications and that we work on scholarship applications, because they didn't just want you to apply as some sort of exercise and like, oh, I applied to college. They wanted you to actually have an opportunity to go and a way to pay for it. Exactly. And so that was something that my parents contributed, because they were both college educated and because they were both teachers. So it was very easy to walk these students through, even though they taught 8th grade, to walk these students through the process. But it wasn't just this one way thing where it was like, this is my parents' community service, to our neighborhood. These were also the kids of people who babysat me when my mom had a PTA meeting or my dad was coaching girls basketball. These were the folks who would come by and fix things at our house or mow the lawn or help us with things around the way. It was a family. It was like everybody contributed what they could and took what they needed. Yeah. And so that was a sense of community that I grew up experiencing, which was we championed each other. We rode for each other. If the school needed something, you'd have the parents like my parents who had expertise and worked in the district saying, we deserve to have da-da-da-da-da, right? And then you had the parents who could be there to be able to support things going, we're going to be here and we're going to run the concession stand, or we're going to show up and make sure things are going well at the school. That's the benefit of having people who are working different hours, are working different jobs, and have different skills and expertise, is that this institution and all the institutions tend to benefit from that diversity. And so again, I'm not advocating for racial segregation in residency, but I am saying that when you have multiple people living together and finding ways to be able to share, the common point was we were all Black. And so this ability to be able to work together because we had some commonality. And I think in Sacramento, we have something very similar here, which is these tight-knit communities, even though people aren't from the same racial and ethnic background. And so now the question is, how do we get to a place where we're all working together so that we're sharing that diversity of expertise and benefiting our communities in this way? And I think in many ways we already do it, but I think there's opportunity to grow that and do better.
And do you think that you pull a little bit of just your background from how you grew up and thinking like, how can we kind of implement the good things here and tweak the bad things and implement them too?
Absolutely. That's my main focus is, what are the things that we do really well and how do we build on them?
Definitely. And I heard you say something about your dad coaching girls basketball. Yes, I have to ask, and I know our viewers would hate it if I didn't ask, because I was a basketball player my whole life too. Did you play basketball? Were you into it?
I did not. No? I did not. I was a soccer girl, and I swam, and I did dance, but I was not a basketball player. I don't have great hand-eye coordination, so if you notice, all the things I did involved like not having to necessarily dribble and do those kinds of things. That's not my jam. But I did dance, I did swim, I did soccer, and so those were my sports.
Yeah, and I think definitely in terms of just like going into youth and going into youth sports, I think in talking to a lot of the youth, a lot of people are more just privy to you and your campaign, and you've been out at the high schools and out at all the events where there's youth in our community. So I want to just get a little bit of background into like connecting with high school students specifically. I know that it's about to be time to apply for colleges and stuff like that, and you're a Spelman grad, right? Right.
You represent the number one HBCU in the country.
Okay.
Just gotta name that.
Right. So what led you? Just walk us down maybe that decision to just connect with our high school seniors. This will be the first year that they vote. It'll be the first year that I vote. Yep. And so just like kind of connecting us with what was that like for you? What was your college experience like?
Absolutely. So I made the decision to go to Spelman in part because my mom went to a women's high school and a women's college. She actually went to the remaining single sex. I think there's only one now. There used to be two. There was one in Maryland. Single sex high school that's public. It's the Philadelphia High School for Girls, or is known as Girls High. And so she enjoyed that experience, and then she went to Chatham College in Pittsburgh, which at the time was all women. It's now co-ed. And so when I was trying to decide where to go to college, I applied to several HBCUs. I had Johnson C. Smith and Howard, and I can't remember if I applied to Hampton, but I had a bunch of schools. I think North Carolina A&T. I also applied to Chapel Hill and USC, so I could have.
In SoCal, we can't talk about USC on this podcast. We're not giving. We're UCLA Bruins all the way.
I'm sorry. My bad. But I applied to West Point because I went to the summer thing there, and I was like, maybe the military academy's for me, which is a very interesting thing knowing my personality. But I was just kind of all over the place. Like, I want to explore these things, and when it came down to it, I decided to go to Spelman because it is one of two HBCUs for Black women, and I really wanted to be in a space where I could really focus on learning about myself. Learning and being in Atlanta was just amazing, and also like being in this smaller environment where I could really dive into the academics, think about opportunity, and just kind of have a reprieve from being the Black girl who was representing Blackness and girlness for so long, and now I get to be in this class of other people who share those things, and so I kind of got to develop the other aspects of my personality without having to be fearful of that. And that, I think, is the gift that Spelman gave me that I don't know if I fully understood when I chose to go to Spelman, but I appreciate it now. Because it gave me 4 years where I got to learn, like, what am I good at? And what do I like? And who do I want to be friends with? And what kind of person do I want to be? And I think that served me really well the rest of the time. We also had a great time. I enjoyed being able to. So my advice to people going off to college is always enjoy yourself. Part of what college is about, and I'm saying this to you since you're heading off, enjoy yourself. Okay, like this is an opportunity for you to be able to make friends. Some of these friends are going to be people you're going to know for the rest of your life. So enjoy that. Some of the learning you're going to do is going to happen outside of the classroom. And this is also going to be your network in the future of people that you want to do good work with in whatever field you're in. So really take the time to cultivate that. Also be about your academics, learn things and lean in there. Get to know your professors, go to the things on campus because when you get older, you have to pay for the things that you're getting as part of your tuition package regularly. People coming to visit the campus and musical events and lectures and all those things. Enjoy those. Just take the time to really soak in this environment. And I did that when I was on campus, and I really appreciated going to the free conferences and participating in the movements and learning about things and having fun. And so it really is a great time to just explore and feel free and question and learn and not feel like you have to have all the answers. And it's something that if you can hold on to that for a long time, that feeling of I don't have to have all the answers, but I can always hone in on the good questions will serve you really well. So that was my Spelman experience. I just celebrated 20 years. So I went. Thank you. Yeah, I'm the class of 2004, so we just had our 20th, reunion in May, and I got together in a house with some of the 10 women that I lived with my freshman and sophomore year. Yeah, I had the same roommate all 4 years of college. We did not know each other before college. We met because we were matched by the housing system.
Randomly put together.
And we are still really close friends to this day. When I go to DC, I often stay with her, and she when she comes out here to visit, and we just have a really great relationship. But all of the women, we had these sets of roommates, and so we all rented a house together and kind of recreated that moment from 20 years ago. And we lived together freshman year and sophomore year. We rigged the system so we could keep our hall together. We're all gonna move together. So we moved downstairs in the same dorm, keeping the same roommate pairs, and so it was really nice. So yeah, and just enjoy that time and cultivate those relationships, because here we are 24 years later from when we met, and we are still good friends. The group chat still goes off multiple times a week, and I love it.
Amazing. I know you talked a little bit about kind of finding yourself outside of like being just your identity, being like, oh, you're the black girl and you're smart and your parents are teachers. And that's something that I really connected with, because I initially went to Christian Brothers, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, which is a very non-diverse group of kids in that school. So in transferring to Grant, I feel like I had the opportunity to not just be like, oh, you're the black girl and you play basketball and that's it. And I got to like step outside of my comfort zone a little bit. So I think that's super important, and finding your personality.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And being in an environment that enriches you and where you feel seen and heard and have an opportunity to explore who you are. That's what these academic institutions should be. It's not just about like obtaining information, and not like you could do that in a lot of places, but it's also the environment in which you get to explore those things and how you get to reflect on them and put it into practice. And I think that's really cool.
That's super cool. In terms of you getting your doctorate degree after that, yes, what kind of inspired that? And also, how are you like tying in the things that you learned in that process and the things that you worked in and studied prior to this election? Like, how are you implementing those things, and how you would make decisions as mayor?
That is a great question too. So I went to Spelman for undergrad. I majored in chemistry, and I double majored in women's studies, and I minored in math because I was a very confused student who was just picking up majors as things seemed interesting to me. And thankfully, one of my professors towards the end of my time in college took pity on me when we were doing research together. We were looking at organohalogens in breast milk, and we were doing some bench chemistry, just analyzing samples of breast milk. And I started asking what were unknown to me at the time public health questions that I was just curious about. Like, I wonder what impact, the different findings in these samples have on like the baby's, growth trajectory, and the quality of the milk and the quantity of the milk. And these are very public health questions. And I think my professor got tired of me asking questions that as a chemist, he wasn't concerned about. He just wanted to do the bench chemistry. And he said, do you have room in your schedule next semester? And I said, yeah. I have plenty of credits. Like, I'm just kind of, enjoying the end of like, junior and senior year. And so he said, take this class at Clark. Clark Atlanta is one of the HBCUs in the consortium known as the Atlanta University Center. And it was a maternal and child health epidemiology class. And when I got there on the first day and I looked at the syllabus and I was like, this is what I want to do. It was a combination of the sociology that I was getting from women's studies. It was a combination of like the science that I was getting from my chemistry. The statistical analyses were a combination of the math. It was like an applied version of my two majors and my minor. And I was like, I have found my people. And so from there, I decided to apply to graduate school in public health and pursue a master's in public health. And so I went to the University of Michigan for that, and I did my MPH there. After my MPH, I moved to Sacramento. So that was what brought me here just about 20 years ago. It was like 19 years ago. And then I split time between Sacramento and Michigan as I was working on my PhD. And so I was here and I was there. Part of that was a guy. So I was like living here, living there, back and forth constantly. Yes. So once I moved here, 19 years ago, I never really moved back. I stayed here and I just kind of went back and forth to work on my PhD. and I worked in public health, working specifically in women's health at first, and then broadly more focusing on what we call social determinants of health, which are the ways that where we live impacts how long we live and the quality of our life, and what we can do to be able to maximize the length of our life and also the quality. And so that's ultimately, like I said, the public health brought me to California. And what I've done since I've been here is work in public health at both the State Department of Public Health as well as at my current organization, Public Health Advocates.
Definitely. That's super cool. And in terms of making the switch over from public health into like the political side of things, who have been like your role models or your mentors and just like switching over things and influencing your journey?
What's really great about it is that I actually have one of my classmates from my Master's in Public Health program is Dr. Joni Ricks-Odie, and she is on the Long Beach City Council. And so she's an epidemiologist also. And so it's really interesting to see some of us in public health make this jump over to, elected positions and running for office, because what we see is the importance of having a public health approach and how we govern. Public health is really thinking about what's the long-term impact of the things that we're doing? How can we prevent as many of the bad things as possible? And then how can we also invest in having more of the good things that we want to see? And that's it's a very big public health approach, and it's not often the way that our systems are set up. Our systems are just set up to respond to whatever's happening in the moment, but we're not really set up to think long term, and we're also not set up to think about how if we do this over there, it impacts that over here. As public health folks, we think about a city or the county or the state as an ecosystem, and what you do over here impacts what's happening over here. So if your wages are low over here, it means more people are going to be on public assistance over here. So you can call yourself saving money from a business perspective by, lowering the wages because it literally is costing you less, but it's actually costing you
more on the back end.
And right, exactly. So we think about this from the perspective of how do you look at the entire ecosystem and say, how do we maximize the outcomes and minimize the costs? And that's why I decided to make that jump, is because there's so much of public health and so much of what happens to us and how our health is shaped that are determined by cities and by counties and by the state. And I wanted to be a part at the local level of what happens in our city.
Is local level always the goal for you, or do you plan to go on to bigger and better things? Or
I have no desire to run for higher office. I try to say it as often as I can. Running for mayor is about as much as I'd like to do in terms of electoral politics for myself as a candidate, because I enjoy the part where I get to sit down and have conversations like this one, and where I get to show up in community spaces, and where I get to really feel like I'm a part of the community. And the higher up you go, the more people you represent. And so the fewer connections you get to make in that way that's meaningful and showing up consistently and doing those things. And for me, that's part of the joy. It's being able to solve problems, but it's also being able to still be a member of the community. And I think mayor is a good balance of those two things that I enjoy. But I would love to be able to champion other people stepping into these roles, because I feel very strongly that sometimes when we stick around, and this is a lesson I'm learning, especially from the greatest generation and some of the older boomers, is that when you stick around too long, you deny other people the benefit of your wisdom and of your mentorship. You also deny people the benefit of having learned from your both successes and mistakes, and coming in and being able to pick up the baton and do something even better. And so I don't want to be one of those people who holds on to a position for a really long time or occupies the space. I want to be able to be supportive of new voices joining in. So my job everywhere I go is to open the door and then bust open the seam so more people can come in.
For everybody else after you. That's super cool.
And so I'd like to see this model replicated in other places where people run a campaign like mine, which is very people powered and very much about being honest and true to your roots and true to who you represent and inspiring. And I want to be able to be a mentor to folks there, and I want to be able to do some additional public health work after my time in office.
Yeah, that's super cool. And you talked about connecting with the community, and I've seen that so much within just your campaign and doing the research, and that's super valuable. In terms of doing that, what are some community connections or maybe community engagement that has stood out to you over the term of your campaign? What stood out to you, and things maybe that you would wanted to see differently, or stood out to you just, that one really touched my heart when I went to this event? What are some things that have just really maybe changed the way that you looked at Sacramento or just gave you insight?
That's a really good question. I have enjoyed so many of the community events that I've been to. I will say I loved judge. I've loved some of the things that I've gotten a chance to judge just as part of this. So I judged the sweet potato festival competition, and that was amazing because I got to try 9 different sweet potato pies and like. Yes, you have to rank them in order, but like you kind of can't go wrong. The worst one was still amazing, right? So like I think I win no matter what. So that was fun. Last week I got to judge this Who's Got Talent competition, which was so much fun. There were a lot of folks. There was only one person I got to see sing, but a bunch of folks were rapping and just like, and I was hoping to be able to see some dancers and whatever else. But that was nice because it's just, again, being a part of the community, being able to give feedback and say, here's what I really liked. Here's what I think you should work on. Here's my score. So that was nice. I've enjoyed participating also. There have been a couple of Hmong events in particular. Hmong New Year has been so much fun, and just learning about the tradition and this huge population of Hmong folks in Sacramento, and being able to do that. And it always falls around my birthday, so it feels especially celebratory. Yes, exactly. And I also went to the Filipino fiesta. And so I think that's one of the things I love about Sacramento is growing up in Pittsburgh, our population was predominantly white and black. And so there wasn't this same cultural exchange. I mean, in Sacramento, we talk about farm to fork. We also have this way of being able to get food from almost any corner of the world here, having people here who speak languages and who are just a part of this. And so that's the part that I've been really excited about, is being able to celebrate other people's culture and also the ways in which we influence each other's culture. So like I was at Filipino fiesta wearing my bolero, but I had it over this traditional attire or traditional like material that I had made in Ghana, but I had it made with, it was like a crop top and some shorts that were made in like my style, right? So it's like this combination of like, I'm a Black American, and and I have this connection to Ghana both from ancestry, just long term, but also from having been there. And I'm like now infusing these cultures together in the way that like they get to be part of the mix. And so that I think has been a really important part of being on the campaign trail, is being able to see people where they are, being able to go to, Latino festivals and go to the AAPI night market, and just like, it's just so nice to be able to see all the things that we have here and to listen to them. I'm a big music and art person, so I keep saying it, but like going to the Black AF auction and being able to see the art there. It's just the creativity. Juneteenth has been wonderful. Like I'm enjoying how many. We went to the Black Cowboys celebration in Oak Park like a week or so ago, and I'm like, I didn't even realize we had this many like Black folks in this region who were riding horses and who were involved in this. So there's a real diversity here, and that's what I enjoy. And it's nice to see our community come together and enjoy those, and for there to be economic opportunities. There are vendors there that are selling things, and that people are out connecting, and everywhere you go you see SMUD. So our utilities district is out here being cool and being in the place
and everything.
Love them. The Meadowview Farmers Market, I was there the day that it opened, and really want to encourage people, since we have your podcast, please support the Meadowview Farmers Market. They're new and starting up, and it's been really hot. They're on Sundays starting at 8 a.m., usually until about 12 or 1, depending on the heat. But show up, because when a farmers market starts, it takes a while for it to build up its clientele. And so if you're able to go over and purchase some things, it helps the vendors continue to want to stay, because it's worthwhile to them until you build up a local like clientele there, as people learn more about it. So
And I'll make sure to put a link somewhere. Somewhere on your screen right now, there's a link to that with all the information. But that's super cool. And it's super good to hear that, especially just on the basis of this podcast about telling your story and being able to kind of step out of your own shoes and into the shoes of somebody else. It's super cool to hear about how Sacramento's cultures connect and like just everyone can come together. Is that something that you plan to like enhance in any way when you step into a position of mayor? Or how would you plan to support that and uplift that and see it exponentially grow?
Yeah, I think there's a combination of things, right? I think it's important to have cultural spaces that people can really celebrate their unique cultures. I also think it's important for those of us who are not a part of the culture to be able to come and celebrate with them. Right. And so, one of the things I'd like to see is just to be able to promote more of this. So we are seeing that cross-cultural pollination and that celebration with each other. So, of course, if you're going to the Filipino fiesta, it's going to be predominantly people who are Filipino there, but also wanting to make sure that over time we see a growth in the number number of people who aren't, who are at the festival. Same thing with Juneteenth. Same thing with like, this is our community. And so this is our history. These are the cultures that are reflected in our communities, and being able to learn about each other, I think allows us to be able to better work together, better appreciate each other's struggle, better appreciate each other's priorities, and just see the humanity in each other more and more. And so that's something that I'd love to be able to work across, the city to be able to better promote, and also just strongly encourage people to show up and be a part of these various, celebrations.
Yeah, no, that's definitely super valuable and super good, something to hear, and a breath of fresh air definitely when it comes to politics and things like that. Yeah. But I'll give you guys a little insight. I am a political science major, so I do have to ask a couple of the political questions.
Yes,
as a Black woman in politics, just what are the unique challenges that you face, and how have you overcome them? Or just like, I know the journey sometimes feels like it's so much longer and so much more far-fetched for us. So how has that just impacted your journey, or maybe even your mental state, if you feel comfortable sharing on this journey?
I have a therapist, and so I get to talk to her, and I have some really great friends that I get to just download with and help to keep me connected, and also help to talk me, out of like frustrations, or talk me through, difficult situations when I'm trying to make decisions. I think one of the things in terms of being a Black woman in politics is recognizing that there is a way sometimes that we frame like our experiences of race through this very overt lens. And we expect it to look a certain way. We expect people to say things to us very directly, and that's not how it shows up. Right? How it shows up is the difference in how you're perceived compared to other people. And so I have certainly experienced that. Here I am, the front runner in this race who, came in first place in the primary by 9,000 votes. And we won 57% of the precincts in Sacramento. And I was up against 3 people who had previously been elected, are men, had better name recognition, right? And in most cases went into the race having more money than I did, because I started with $0 on April 13th when my campaign was opened. And, I think it was someone saying to me that if you were not a woman, if you were not a Black woman, people would be celebrating the fact that you did that, and would be really excited to be working with you. But instead, there are always asterisks to it. Well, the guy split the vote. Well, that only happened because, well, you won't be able to repeat. Well, there's a lot of knows that we often put these caveats, right?
Taken away from our accomplishments almost.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that's interesting, because we knocked 25,000 doors. We made 50,000 phone calls. Right. We raised $450,000, right, to be able to send mailers and to be able to run digital ads. Like, we ran a campaign. Right. And so when people do the combination of things that we did, and also have a message that connects with voters, you win. Right. And so the notion that somehow this was a fluke, or somehow it didn't come from what, Americans, when it's anybody else except Black women, it's hard work. But here it's DEI, right? Here it's being taken. And I'm like, DEI stands for I definitely earned it, because nobody opened up and cleared a pathway for me, right? Not and yes, diversity, equity, inclusion is important. I am proud to be a Black woman running for this, but I'm also very clear that I worked hard and followed a playbook that the farm workers and that the civil rights movement and everyone else has followed to be able to connect with people, and make something happen. And so, so there is an interesting space as a Black woman where you don't get the credit that you deserve for your hard work, and it is often discounted. And that, that can be very frustrating. I also think that, we're treated differently. Some of that can be good, right? I think that, I didn't have any attack ads against me in the primary because people, didn't think enough of me to think I was worth attacking. Right. That will be different now, that they see me as a threat. So that, that and how they're going to approach me may be different, because they have to worry. I mean, Sacramento is a fairly progressive place that doesn't want to see very overtly ugly things. So they're going to have to come at me very carefully in terms of how they frame me, because otherwise people are going to go, that's really racist and sexist, right? And I don't like it. It doesn't feel good. Even if you might be making like, that doesn't seem above the board. So it's a unique place to be in, because we've all been socialized to have our racial and our gender identities and our opinions of others. And sometimes our stated values and our biases don't overlap. And so people can have stated value of, I believe in equity, and I believe, in giving people opportunity, and I believe in justice. And then you have biases though of, well, this is what a mayor's supposed to look like, but her earrings are too big, but but her hair is too, but her, I don't fit the mold.
Yeah, what they want in their heads, right?
The number of people who sent me emails about my earrings on one of the primary mayoral forums and started with, I agreed with everything you said, but. And I'm like, wasn't the point of this for me to share my thoughts on things, not for you to tell me what I'm supposed to look like?
Yeah. It's not about the look of things. It's about what's coming out of your mouth, how you're going to impact the community. Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I think we see that a lot in just social media and content in today is you see Sha'Carri at the Olympics. Why are her nails this color? Why is her hair this color? And that girl is sprinted. She is outrunning folks left and right. So,
and I'm like, my nail color, my earrings being like, that doesn't stop me from being able to do my job. Right. But what it does do is in a city that has, such a diversity of people from different backgrounds who are mostly coming from cultures that are very colorful and that we're loud adornments, right? And all of that. What it does is it signals that leadership can look different. Yeah. And so what I don't want to do is be out here pretending to be a white man, because that's who you think of when you think of mayor or when you think of elected official. I want to, again, open the door for other people to see themselves here. And so I recognize that being the only woman in this race, women of all backgrounds are able to see more of themselves in me. I recognize that being a woman of color in this race, that women of color were able to see themselves in me, especially in the colors that I chose to wear and the way that I choose to present myself. And that being a black woman meant that black women were able to, and girls were able to see themselves in me. And see themselves represented. And so one of the things I want to always take advantage of in this political sphere is changing what a professional looks like, what a mayor looks like. And I think that's one of the things that I've tried to be very intentional about, is looking different so that it allows other people to challenge their conceptions of what it's supposed to look like.
It's definitely super cool. And it sounds like you really hold on a pedestal the responsibility that you have in terms of just, you mentioned young black girls looking up to you, women around the world looking at, or around the city looking up to you. And that's definitely something that's super cool. And I think that everyone should find within themselves, because even the youngest of kids, your little sibling is still looking up to you. I think that's something that I see a lot with my brother. I'm like, okay, let me make sure I'm doing the right thing, because he's going to come and follow soon after. So that's super, super cool that it's something that you value. So before we wrap up, I definitely want to give you the floor to just address the things that you are hoping to address as mayor, and just the big points in your campaign, and just let people know, like, if you had to shorten or summarize the biggest things that you want to tackle when you have that position, what are they?
Yeah, I want us to be able to work better together. And so that means being able to allow community voices to have a say in what we do and to be partners in how we do it. And that's really important to me. I want to be able to address homelessness and focus on making sure we don't have kids sleeping on our streets and families with kids, but also making sure that we're addressing the people who are often hardest to reach because they're cycling in and out of our emergency departments and our jails, and we're getting lots of calls of service for them. How do we address them? Because if we were able to, it would really change the tenor, and it would also change the amount of money we're spending on this challenge, because for a lot less money we could get them stabilized, and then we'd actually be able to work on the majority of people who are somewhere in the middle who need more of our support, and that we need to build more housing in the process to be able to do that, and make sure we have safe places for people to go to attend to their human needs, like taking a shower and washing clothes and charging cell phones and having a safe place to sleep and being able to eat and be able to be protected from when it's 100 degrees outside or when it's 30 degrees outside, which happens in Sacramento every year. So those are really important to me. I want to also make sure that we are thinking economically about the future of our city and making sure that people have jobs. I hear from far too many people your age that they're worried about staying in Sacramento and whether they're going to be able to afford a house, whether they're going to be able to afford rent, whether they're going to be able to get a job that pays them enough, whether they're going to be able to get a job, right? And so I want to make sure that we start to answer those questions here, and that this is a place where people see a future for themselves, and and that future can look bright and look enjoyable, because that's how our time on earth is limited. And so we want it to be as good as possible. And I really do think that's a possibility by us thinking about how do we build up our Job Corps? How do we support our small businesses? How do we help entrepreneurs start up and actually get their businesses off the ground and really be able to thrive? I also want to make sure that we think about safety, because every one of us wants to go from point A to point B and back to point A safely every day. And so what does that look like? It looks like making sure that we don't have, traffic accidents that are happening. We've had more people killed and severely injured in traffic accidents than we have homicides. So that's a problem. And so we need to invest dollars to make sure that we can make sure that those intersections that are high risk are addressed and that they are safe. We also need to think about, the violent crime. We had 2 years with no youth homicides back in 2017 to 2020. And we did that by investing in the people who would go out from the community and intervene when we knew that there was, drama between this person and that person.
Something I definitely appreciate, especially in just like I said, I went to school in Del Paso Heights. I went to Grant, so I lost 2 friends I only went to Grant for 2 years. So that's definitely something that's terrible and taking over Sacramento, taking over our country, honestly.
Absolutely.
And so to hear that be addressed is super, especially from a youth perspective. I know I kind of represent my peers from the ages 14 to 18. And so I think that's something that gets overlooked in how it affects us, and not just, everybody is these things happen, but it's a direct impact on us. So absolutely. I really appreciate that being addressed, because I think it's sometimes looked over, especially from a youth aspect.
I don't want any empty chairs at graduation or any families having to collect the diploma, after somebody has passed away in their honor. I want them to be there to collect it. I want that to be a celebratory moment, not a bittersweet moment for a family. And so that's important to me. And so I want to make sure that we are investing dollars in a way that allows people to be able to be safe on our streets in terms of transportation and safe on our streets in terms of free from violence. And that's possible for us in Sacramento. And then, of course, we got to address climate change, because someone said to me the other day, and I was like, I don't love the truth in that statement, which is, welcome to the coldest summer of the rest of your life. And it was 108 degrees that day. And I was like, I don't want this to be the coldest summer of the rest of my life. That means it's going to be hotter every summer. Let's stop that. And so I want us to implement our climate plan. I want us to find ways to store solar energy so that we can be an international leader on renewable energy. I want us to green up our transportation fleet. I want us to be able to have more people opting into taking public transit and to using transportation modes that are a lot better for the environment. I want those things for our city. And so those are my priorities, because that's what I've heard from people in this community that they want to be their priorities. And so I want us to now start to figure out, how do we work together on these things? How do we come together to make sure that we're not displacing people from a community and contributing to gentrification while we're improving it? Right. What are the things we need to do to make sure that we're addressing homelessness and we're also not creating trash and blight and all kinds of other things on a neighborhood? We can do these things together. We can be part of that Venn diagram where you get your needs met and so do I. There's always that overlapping part, and that's where I want us to focus a lot of our attention. Yes, how do you win and I win, instead of it has to be, in order for me to win, you lose, or in order for me to win, you lose. Why can't we both win?
Right. Yeah, that's definitely all big things, and all things that I think everyone feels refreshed to hear in terms of just connecting with the community. I know right now you're super connected with the community. You're out. We're open to coming to this, which is crazy. So is it still a plan to still remain that connected with the community? Absolutely. Do you have an open door policy? How does that work? How does that look for you if you're in office?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I'm really big on is that our office, the mayor's office, has the capacity to have about 15 staff people. And so in our community engagement piece, I really want to make sure that we have someone whose job is to focus on partnerships. So making sure that people in the community that need to be connected are connected, because there's a lot of lost opportunity for collaboration because people don't know that somebody else is doing the same thing and they could work together. I want to work with our foundations that help to fund some of the work in the city to be able to say, how can we work together from city perspective, because we fund certain things, and from your perspective to help seed an environment where these organizations are collaborating instead of competing. Yeah. I want to be out, and I want you to invite me to be on your podcast, to be on, on your shows, to come to your events. We want to show up to as many of them as possible, because I think it's fun. Like, I like to dance, I like art, I like music, I love food. So invite me, right? Like, yes. And also it's a place for us to connect and have that shared human experience that allows us to then be able to come back to the table to solve hard problems. Like, it's so much easier to work through something difficult when you have a relationship and when you have some shared experience. Just like I was talking about in my neighborhood growing up, like the fact that we were all experiencing this blackness and living in the same space and going to the same church and the same parks and the same schools meant that we had some things to build on and to work together. So when stuff popped off, it's like, yeah, but your kids and my kids go to school together. So I think we can work this out, right?
Connect with people when you have that little background.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's super cool. So we're going to wrap it up, but I want to give you the floor. So if there's any last things that you want to let the people of Sacramento know, we have followers from all around the world, so the people of the world know, or just any last bit of advice that you would give, and then we'll take a picture in front of our sign. That's everyone that comes on has to take a picture in front of the sign, so we'll do that. But first, I'll give you an open floor if there's anything else that you want to share or ask me or anything.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Leah, for having me on. This was really fun, and I enjoy it, and so please have me back whenever you're back on break. I'd love to come back after we win the election and we get to talk about what we're going to do next and how things are going. And that also goes for any of you listening. If you have your own show that you'd like me to come on, please reach out to the campaign. I think that's my big thing is
the email information. There's somewhere on your screen. Again, somewhere on your screen.
And the website is floformayor.com. So come out and join us. There are opportunities for you to knock on doors. We never send you out alone. You can do it with other people. It really is a lot of fun and a way to connect with the community. Also, for those of you who need volunteer hours or want letters of recommendation for college, for scholarship programs, etc., we're happy to provide those with you getting along. We have a great group of people who show up to do that, and it really can be a lot of fun. We also do phone banking. That's a way to be able to help. If you happen to have a few extra dollars and you live in the U.S., because I know you said you have international folks, we can't take international contributions, but that really does help us to be able to get the message out, to run more ads, to print things, including lawn signs, all of those. So we'd love to get you involved, especially those of you who are younger, because you were able to talk to your friends and you're able to help get out the vote. And that's incredibly important. We have other things on the ballot in addition to the mayor's race that are really important this year. Things about crime, things about the environment, things about healthcare. And so it's important that you also look down those propositions and make sure you let your voices be heard about those as well. And there's a bunch of great voter guides that I'll be sharing out and saying, hey, here's some information to help you make these decisions, because some of them can be complicated. I would obviously love to have your vote. So please, check Flo Cofer for mayor when you get your ballot in October, and make sure you turn them in by November 5th. You can register to vote at any point in time leading up to the election, including on election day. If you have a former felony, you still can vote. We voted a few years ago to be able to restore the voting rights for people who have felonies. A lot of people don't know that, so spread that word. We try to make it very easy in Sacramento for you to be able to vote, so you literally can register and vote on the same day at any of the polling places. But if you register before middle of September, your ballot will be mailed to you. You can mail it back with no postage. You can drop it off anytime between October and November. So we try to make it really easy. So please register, please vote, please tell a friend, please share with other people. I would love to be able to work with you as your next mayor.
I will tell Generation Z, from my perspective, this is our first year, our first opportunity to have a seat at the table. So definitely make sure that you guys register, pick up your ballots, do everything that we need to do to make sure that our voice is heard in this election.
That's right. It's sad on one hand that I'm no longer the young people. I will say that. I just got to say I'm 41 now. And so I'm recognizing I'm middle-aged and I'm no longer the young people, especially sitting here next to somebody so bright and young. I'm like, dang, I had a good run.
Away for us, though. I'm like, okay, now I see the role models. Thank you.
But I appreciate, especially, shout out. I know Gen Z, you get a lot of flack from older people, and I just want to say directly to you, to the camera, that I appreciate you, because I give you a lot of credit. You all have been through a lot in your short lives in terms of all the things that have happened to you politically, and also you are voting at levels that none of us voted when we were your age. So you deserve a lot of credit for that too. And people will continue to say to you, y'all aren't showing up. If these young people show up, blah, blah, blah. You're showing up better than us. Keep showing up, because you are also showing us up in terms of the way you're showing up right now. And I really appreciate it. And you're very serious about the environment. You're very serious about safety. You're very serious about justice. And I super respect it. So a big shout out to you. You all are doing things that we could not have imagined. As you always say, we could never. So I appreciate you also for being our moral compass and reminding us why we do what we do, and really giving some energy to this movement. Like, you're reminding us that it's okay to still dream. It's okay to, be principled. It's okay to try to do things differently, because there's a lot on the line. So I really appreciate, and especially you, Leah. Thank you so much for the leadership you've shown to this city. I am sad that you're going to be in LA for most of the year. Coming back, and we're going to work hard to recruit you back so you get to be there just long enough to earn that degree and then come on back home.
Thank you so much for being on. Thank you so much for telling your story on behalf of everybody. It was a super great episode. We'll take our picture, and I will make sure to link everything that Flo mentioned below, and thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's take our little picture.
Let's do it.
Right in front of our son. You can move your chair in, yep.
You can send it to me.
Yes, of course.
I'll make sure I post you.